The garage door was wide open. That alone was enough to make my heart stop. For over 40 years, Linda and I guarded that garage like a secret room in our marriage. But that morning, the space was empty. The car, my wife's car, her pride, her heartbeat was gone. My son had sold it to take his wife on a trip to Paris. But the real storm didn't start until the next morning. A stranger called me. He said he had my car and a message from my late wife. Don't miss what happened next. Subscribe and stay with me. I was standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold in my hands. The spring sunlight came through the window, but it felt colder than it should. My eyes were fixed on the garage door across the yard. It was rolled wide open. Even from here, the emptiness inside reached me like a silent scream. For over 4 decades, Linda never let me leave that garage unlocked. She treated that car like a heartbeat, something that never stopped. She's been gone 8 months now, but I still heard her humming in the mornings when the sun spilled over the driveway. My chest tightened. I set the cup down and pushed the back door open. The air smelled of cut grass and damp concrete. It was the kind of morning Linda loved. She would have been out there already, polishing the hood with that soft cloth she kept in the glove compartment. But instead, there was nothing. No sparkle, no chrome. Just a wide, aching hole where her car had been. The old oil stain sat in the middle of the floor like a wound that refused to heal. 22 years of her 1967 Shelby sitting there, like a loyal friend who never left. Now, it was gone. I pressed my hand to the doorframe, my breathing shaky. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same thing I'd told my patients for decades back when I worked as a paramedic. But it didn't help. Not with this kind of hollow. I walked to the workbench. Every tool hung in its place, carefully outlined in black marker the way I'd done the week Linda got sick. I didn't change a thing after she died. Not one nail. Not one wrench. Her gloves were still folded neatly on the shelf. Her old radio still sat next to the red toolbox. And next to that, her journal. Open. Just the way she left it. The last entry was from 3 weeks before she passed. Almost done. Just a few more weekends, and she'll be perfect. I can't wait to show Richard the open road again. Next summer, it'll be us and the wind. My throat burned. I closed the journal and held it for a moment before setting it down exactly where it had been. The air smelled like oil, old leather, and that citrus hand soap Linda used after every tune-up. Then I heard it, a low hum. The sound of Michael's black sedan turning into the driveway. That sound used to make me happy when he was younger. It meant he'd come home. But today, it only knotted something deeper inside me. Michael stepped out, hands buried in his jacket pockets. 38 years old, but he still had the same guilty stance he used when he broke my old wristwatch at 16. Sophie followed, not a single hair out of place, sunglasses covering half her face, like she'd stepped out of a glossy magazine. Michael stopped at the edge of the driveway. Sophie stood beside him, arms crossed, watching me in that way that made me feel like a stranger in my own house. "Dad," he started, voice low. I didn't move. "Where's the car, Michael?" His jaw tightened, his shoulders slumped. "That's what I need to talk to you about." "Where is it?" "I sold it," he blurted out, just like that. The words fell between us like a brick through glass. For a second, I thought I'd heard wrong. "You, what?" "I sold the car," he repeated. "Yesterday afternoon. I needed the money, Dad. Sophie's been planning this trip to Paris for months. It's for her business." I let out a sharp laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was too absurd to be real. "For a trip?" Sophie stepped forward, calm and polished like always. "It's not just a trip, Richard. It's an investment in our future. We've been working hard to build something for ourselves. It made sense. The car was just sitting here." I stared at her, then at Michael. "That car wasn't yours to sell. Dad, Mom's gone. You don't even drive it anymore. It's just metal and rubber sitting in a garage." "Just metal and rubber," my voice cracked in the middle. "Your mother rebuilt that car with her hands. Every weekend, 22 years of work. It was her soul in steel." Michael finally looked me in the eyes. His were rimmed red, tired, almost pleading. I got a good price for it. 15,000. That's fair for a car that old. Fair, I whispered. Sophie touched his arm like she owned it. We leave tomorrow. We didn't want to fight about it. It's done. I stared at them both. Michael's hands trembled in his pockets. Sophie stood there, elegant and cold as marble. She'd only been in our lives 2 years, but she had a way of turning everything into hers. You should have asked me, I said quietly. He flinched. Would you have said yes? No. Exactly. His voice hardened. I stepped closer. Michael, that car wasn't just a car. It was your mother's last promise. She wanted to teach you to drive it next summer. She wrote it down in her journal. Sophie let out a soft, dismissive laugh. Richard, it's done. You'll get over it. We all have to move on sometime. I turned my gaze on her. You don't get to speak to me about moving on. You didn't lose her. We did. Her smile froze. Michael shifted nervously, caught between us. We'll send you photos from Paris, Sophie added. The city's beautiful this time of year. You'd love it. The cruelty in her casual tone was so polished, so practiced. I almost believed she didn't even hear herself. Michael grabbed her arm lightly. We should go. Still need to pack. They walked back to their car. He looked back once, just once. I stood in the garage, arms folded, slippers cold against the concrete, and then he got in the car and drove away. I was alone again. I walked back to the garage, right to that dark oil stain on the floor. The air was heavy, silent. Sunlight poured in, but it didn't make it warm. It only made the emptiness louder. I picked up Linda's journal again, fingers brushing over the ink she left behind. Next summer. The open road. My chest hurt. I closed the garage door, locked it, and walked back inside. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't heal, the kind that lingers, the kind that grows. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt like her voice. Every shadow on the wall felt like the car sitting right where it used to be. By 4 in the morning, I was at the kitchen table with her journal open in front of me, staring at the page where she wrote about teaching me how to shift gears properly, like she was still here, whispering directions over my shoulder. Then the phone rang. The sound sliced through the silence like a blade. The caller ID was a number I didn't recognize. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. Hello? I said. Mr. Walters? A man's voice asked, rough around the edges. My name is Tommy Evans. I own Evans Classic Motors. I have your car. And sir, there's something your wife wanted you to know. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. What did you just say? She made me promise, before she passed. Please, Mr. Walters, you need to come right now. The coffee in front of me was still untouched when I grabbed my keys. The drive to the east side of town was quiet. Even the early spring birds outside seemed to know that something was shifting in my life. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles were white. The old truck I drove made a faint humming sound. It always did when I was nervous. The industrial area was still half asleep. Rows of squat buildings lined the street like grey teeth, and the morning sun was caught in the thin mist that hadn't burned off yet. I spotted the sign for Evans Classic Motors, clean, modest, but proud. Chrome letters over a dark brick wall. Out front, under the early light, a few vintage cars gleamed like polished coins. But what made my chest tighten was the sight of a burgundy Shelby GT 500 behind the chain-link fence, her car, Linda's car. A man was standing out front. Grey hair, worn jeans, button-down shirt tucked neatly. He was watching the street like he'd been waiting for me. When I pulled in, he walked toward me immediately, his expression a mix of caution and something softer, something familiar. Mr. Walters? He asked, as soon as I stepped out of the truck. Yes. He extended his hand. His grip was firm, but his hand trembled slightly. I'm Tommy Evans. Thank you for coming. I nodded once. My voice didn't trust me yet. Tommy cleared his throat. Your wife, Linda. She saved my life 25 years ago. I doubt she ever told you. I frowned, trying to place his face. It came slowly, a shadow in the back rows of the funeral home. He'd been there but left before I could talk to anyone. I needed a loan back then, he continued. Had this dream of opening a dealership. No one would touch me. Bad credit, no collateral. But Linda. She walked into the bank with me, co-signed everything. She barely knew me, but she believed in me. I swallowed hard. She never mentioned that. She wouldn't have, Tommy said softly. That's who she was. She didn't do things to be thanked. She did them because she believed in people. This dealership exists because of her. The edges of my vision blurred. I forced myself to breathe. When your son brought the Shelby in, Tommy said, I recognized it instantly. She used to show me pictures of it whenever we saw each other at car shows, said it was her rolling heartbeat. My throat tightened. He sold it for $15,000. Tommy winced. Yeah, he thought that was a fair price, but that car, Mr. Walters, that car is worth around $180,000. I took a step back. The number didn't make sense. It didn't fit into the world I'd woken up in. What? It's a documented 1967 Shelby GT 500, he explained gently. One of just over 2,000 ever made. She restored it piece by piece for more than 2 decades. Museum-level quality. Your son had no idea what he was holding in his hands when he sold it. And I sat down on the curb right there because my legs didn't feel steady anymore. Tommy crouched next to me. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, he said quietly, I bought it, paid Michael the $15,000 because he was desperate, said something about Paris, but that car was never meant to stay here. It belongs to you. Linda made me promise that. He blinked at him. Promise? He nodded. 2 years ago, she came here with the car. She said she wanted to install a hidden compartment. Something just for you. She told me, if anything ever happens to me, Tommy will make sure Richard finds it. I didn't ask questions. I just helped her. My heartbeat slowed to a heavy thud. Come on, Tommy said softly. She left something for you. He led me through the showroom. The building smelled of clean oil, polished chrome, and memory. In the back garage, under the bright lights, the Shelby waited. Burgundy paint gleamed like velvet, chrome shining like a mirror. It sat there, as if it had been waiting for me all along. I walked toward it slowly. My hand brushed over the hood, cool and smooth. It was like touching Linda again, the way her hands felt after she'd been outside on a cool morning. I opened the driver's door. The leather seat still smelled like home. Tommy leaned against the door frame. She asked me to show you how to get to it, behind the radio. Oh. I frowned slightly, reaching for the radio face. He guided me through it, press here, pull there. The panel popped loose with a soft click. Behind it was a small, dark compartment. My hands shook as I reached inside. My fingers brushed against paper. I pulled out a thick manila folder, a sealed envelope with my name in Linda's handwriting, and at the very bottom, a small wooden box with a key inside. Tommy didn't say anything. He quietly stepped out of the garage, giving me the space to be alone with what she'd left. The envelope came first. Linda's handwriting curved across the page in black ink. Richard, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I wish I could have told you sooner. I wanted to, but I had to be sure. For 18 months, I've been investigating Sophie. She isn't who she says she is. Her real name is Sophie Klein. She's done this before. Twice that I've found so far. She targets families with assets, aging parents, sons who trust too easily. She's going to come for the house, Richard. That's her pattern. She'll convince Michael you're slipping, that you need care, and then she'll push to sell. And when she gets the money, she'll vanish. There's proof in the folder. Don't trust her. Protect yourself. Protect our boy. He's blind right now, but he's a good man. And Richard, I love you. I always have. I always will. Even from wherever I am, I'll still protect you. My hands trembled as I held the paper. The words were hers, every loop and curve of ink. She'd known. All this time she'd known what Sophie was planning. I opened the folder next. Photographs. Sophie in a white dress at a wedding, not ours. An older man by her side, another wedding, another man. Copies of marriage certificates, police reports, newspaper clippings. Elderly mother loses life savings after daughter-in-law convinces son to sell house. Every story was the same. Then there were pages in Linda's handwriting, dates, observations, conversations, Sophie asking questions about the house deed, Sophie taking pictures during visits, Sophie casually mentioning assisted living facilities. She'd been building her story piece by piece, just like she built the car. Finally, the small wooden box. Inside, the key was taped to a note. Safe deposit box at First National Bank, box 447. Everything you'll need is there. I pressed my fingers against my lips and closed my eyes. Even in death, she'd found a way to take care of me. Tommy returned quietly, stopping at the edge of the garage. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there like someone who'd already cried all their tears. She protected me, I whispered. He nodded slowly. That's who Linda was. I looked at him. Tommy, thank you for keeping your promise. He lowered his head. It wasn't a favor. It was my way of paying her back. Now it's your turn to finish what she started. I looked back at the Shelby. It wasn't just a car. It never was. It was a vault, a message, a shield Linda built long before she left this world. I placed the envelope and the folder carefully on the passenger seat, closed the door, and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. She'd protected me. Now it was my turn to protect our son. The moment I left the dealership, the wind outside felt different, sharper somehow, as if the air itself knew the ground had just shifted beneath my feet. I drove straight to the bank, the small wooden box with the key sitting on the passenger seat like a silent weight. Every stoplight felt longer than usual. Every car around me moved slower, like the world had slipped into a different rhythm while I was still catching up. The First National Bank looked the same as it always had: glass doors, neat landscaping, and that faint scent of floor polish lingering in the air. I walked to the counter and asked to access safe deposit box 447. A middle-aged manager with a warm smile escorted me to the vault. When the door sealed behind us with that low metallic thud, the air grew heavy and still. The key slid into the lock perfectly. Inside was a single envelope, thick and carefully sealed. I opened it with hands that weren't entirely steady. Inside lay stock certificates, some folded documents, and a handwritten letter from Linda. Richard, do you remember that young man I treated at the clinic back in '94? The one who started a small tech company. I invested $5,000 back then, never expecting a thing. I forgot about those stocks until a few months before I got sick. Richard, that company went public. These shares are worth a lot now. More than we ever saved in a lifetime. You're secure. If something happens to me, use this money to protect yourself. Don't let Sophie touch it. She's after more than the car. She's after our life. I read that part twice. Then again. My hands tightened around the letter as I glanced at the certificates. The manager checked the value on her computer, her polite expression shifting as the numbers came up. Mr. Walters, she said softly, these are valued at approximately $342,000. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. That number didn't sound real. It was the kind of number that changed lives. And Linda had hidden it, not out of fear, but out of love, to keep it away from someone who was circling our family like a quiet storm. I walked out of the bank with the envelope clutched tightly to my chest, feeling the ground beneath me differently. Sophie wasn't after a Paris trip. She was building a future on the ashes of mine. That afternoon, I drove to a quiet diner on the west side of town to meet someone Tommy told me about, Peter Collins. He was a retired detective who'd worked with Linda before she got too sick to continue the investigation herself. Tommy had said only one thing over the phone before giving me his number. He was waiting for you to call. Fear. Peter was in his mid-50s, grey hair cut short, a crisp button-down shirt, and the kind of stillness that only people who've seen a lot carry with them. He sat in a booth near the window, a stack of folders beside a half-empty mug of black coffee. Mr. Walters, he greeted, rising just slightly from the booth before sitting back down. Richard, I corrected. He nodded once. Linda told me about you. She told me about everything. Oh, hearing her name like that from a stranger, someone who'd known what she was fighting for behind my back, felt like a punch in the chest. She was sharp, Peter said. Knew something wasn't right with Sophie almost from the beginning. I've been following the paper trail she started. He opened the folder in front of him. Inside were neatly organized documents, printouts and photos. She has a pattern, he explained. 2 confirmed victims before your family. Both were older men's sons, just like Michael. She charmed them, married fast, and started whispering seeds about the parents being in decline. Then she pushed for the family house to be sold. In both cases, she took the money and vanished overseas. My jaw tightened. Do you have their names? He slid 2 sheets of paper across the table. The first, Stanley Wright, Phoenix, Arizona. His elderly mother's house sold after Sophie convinced him she needed memory care. Money vanished. The second, George Murphy, Tampa, Florida. His father's auto repair shop sold for nearly $200,000. 3 days later, Sophie disappeared. Call them, Peter said simply. They'll tell you the same story. It'll hurt, but it'll give you the strength you'll need to face what's coming. I nodded, though my hands trembled slightly as I took the papers. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Linda and I had shared every big decision of our lives, with the house dark, except for the soft yellow light over my head. My phone felt heavy in my palm. I called Stanley first. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice weathered but alert. Hello? Mr. Wright. My name is Richard Walters. I'm calling because my son is married to a woman named Sophie Klein. The line went silent. Then a deep, tired sigh. I was wondering when this call would come. I felt a chill crawl through my chest. Can you tell me what happened to you? Stanley spoke slowly, deliberately, as if the words were carved into him. He'd met Sophie at a community center where his mother volunteered. She'd been kind, attentive, patient. She'd made him believe in second chances. 6 months after meeting, they married. Soon after, she began commenting on his mother's forgetfulness, her tired eyes, the way she seemed frail. End of quote. She left pamphlets on dementia on the kitchen counter, sent him articles about elder care, planted fear like seeds in a field she knew would grow, and it worked. Stanley believed her. He convinced his mother to sell her house, 42 years of memories gone overnight. 2 weeks after the sale, Sophie disappeared with every dollar. His mother died less than a year later in a facility she never needed. Stanley's voice cracked. She made me believe I was protecting her. I took everything from her instead. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. I'm so sorry, Richard, he said quietly. Whatever she's telling your son, whatever she's planning, document everything. Don't let her get close to the house. She's a storm dressed as a woman. I thanked him and hung up. The second call went to George Murphy. His voice was rougher, more clipped, but the story was almost identical. Sophie entered his life during a funeral, said she understood grief, and became his comfort. 8 months later, she pushed him to sell his father's shop. 3 days after the check cleared, she vanished. She's smart, George said. She knows exactly how to make you believe she loves you. She learns your weaknesses, then uses them as tools. Your son doesn't see it, but she's already laying the groundwork. Once she gets control of the house, it's over. No? After I hung up, I just sat there in the kitchen, staring at nothing, listening to the tick of the wall clock Linda had insisted on keeping, even when it broke twice. Peter's voice echoed in my head. She plants seeds, and she had. Michael asking me 2 months ago where I kept the deed. Sophie taking photos of the house when she came to dinner. Her soft, careful comments about the stairs being dangerous for someone my age. The way she'd started using we when she talked about decisions that weren't hers. Linda had seen it all before I did. She'd mapped the whole storm out for me. The next morning, I met Peter again. He'd already pulled up Sophie's financial records. She's living on credit cards under Michael's name, he explained. About $32,000 in debt, all on designer clothes, expensive restaurants, hotels. She's building a life on borrowed time and borrowed money. He laid a timeline on the table. Phase 1. Paris trip a fantasy to make Michael dream bigger. Phase 2. Raise concerns about me. Phase 3. Convince Michael I need to sell the house. Phase 4. Disappear. I stared at the paper. How long do we have? She's careful. I'd say 2 to 3 months before she makes a real move. But Richard, Peter's voice lowered. The only way this works is if Michael sees the truth himself. If you push too hard, she'll turn it on you. She's good at that. I nodded slowly. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a man lost in his own house. I felt like a man holding a map. Linda had left me everything I needed. I looked out the window as the morning sun spilled across the street. Sophie didn't know yet. She didn't know she was walking into a fight she wasn't going to win. I pressed my palm against the letter Linda had written, folded carefully in my jacket pocket. It was warm from my body heat, or maybe from the strength she'd left behind for me. She protected me once. Now it's my turn to protect our son. The Tuesday they came back from Paris, the air felt heavier than usual, as if the walls of my house could already sense what was about to happen. The kitchen smelled like slow-cooked pot roast, Michael's favorite since he was a boy. When Linda was alive, I used to help her peel potatoes while she stood by the stove, singing old rock songs softly under her breath. That same pot now sat bubbling on the stove, the sound of it filling the quiet house. I'd prepared everything, the good plates, real silverware, the warm bread that Michael loved, tearing apart with his hands. Their car pulled into the driveway at exactly 6. Michael looked tired, not the good kind of tired you get from traveling, but the kind that lives behind your eyes. Sophie was radiant. Perfect hair, a silk blouse I'd never seen before, an expensive bag hanging from her shoulder. Paris had treated her well. "Dad," Michael greeted as he stepped through the door. He gave me a hug that lasted half a second longer than usual. Sophie kissed me on the cheek like she was playing a role she'd rehearsed. We sat around the kitchen table, the same one where Linda and I had raised a boy into a man, and Sophie took control of the conversation as easily as flipping a switch. She painted pictures of Paris with broad, glamorous strokes, candlelit dinners, cobblestone streets, champagne by the river. She spoke about our future and building a life, as if every word she said was carved in gold. Michael laughed along, but his eyes drifted. There was a nervous weight behind them, a shadow he hadn't carried before. "It was wonderful," Sophie said finally, resting her hand lightly over Michael's. "But it made us realize how much we're missing out on here. Richard, you'd love it too. The architecture, the museums. A house like this, it's just so much for one person." There it was. Her voice was sugar, but the blade was beneath it. "I'm managing fine," I said quietly. Sophie tilted her head, smiling like she was talking to a child who didn't understand. "Of course, but it's a lot for someone your age. The stairs, the yard work, we just care about your safety." Michael nodded slightly. She'd gotten to him. "I appreciate the concern," I said, my voice steady. "But this is my home. Linda and I built a life here. I'm not leaving it because you think I should." The smile on Sophie's face didn't fade, but I saw something sharp flash behind her sunglasses. A calculation. She didn't push. Not yet. Predators don't strike right away, they circle. After dinner, we moved to the living room. I'd made coffee and an apple pie just the way Linda used to. Sophie excused herself to the bathroom. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I got up quietly and followed. I found her not in the bathroom but standing at the top of the stairs near Linda's old office. The door to the bathroom downstairs was wide open and empty behind her. She jumped when she saw me. "Oh," I got turned around. "This house has so many rooms." "The bathroom's downstairs," I said evenly. She laughed lightly, touched my arm. Of course, silly me. When they left an hour later, she waved sweetly. "Take care of yourself, Richard. We'll see you soon." The second the door closed, the sweetness melted from the air. I stood in the living room for a long time, just breathing, listening to the silence settle like dust. The next morning, I called Michael. My voice was calm, deliberately calm. "Son, can you come by this afternoon? Just you. There's something I need to show you about your mother." There was a long silence on the other end. "Sophie and I don't keep secrets, Dad. This isn't about her. It's about your mother. Please." Another pause. "All right, I'll come by." When he arrived that afternoon, his shoulders were tight, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets the way he did as a teenager when he expected a lecture. I had coffee ready on the table and Linda's folder, the one I'd pulled from the Shelby, laid out in front of me. "Dad, if this is about the car again." "It's not." He hesitated but sat down. I slid Linda's letter across the table. "Read this first, then we'll talk." He unfolded it slowly. I watched his eyes move line by line. I saw the flicker in his expression when he got to the part about Sophie. Then the color drained from his face. "This isn't real," he whispered. "She investigated her for 18 months, I said quietly. "Your mother wasn't paranoid. She was trying to protect you." He shoved the letter back. "She never liked Sophie. She was always suspicious. This doesn't prove anything." I didn't raise my voice. I'd spent a lifetime talking people through panic and denial as a paramedic. "Then look at the evidence." I opened the folder. Photographs of Sophie in 2 different weddings with 2 different men. Marriage certificates, news articles, victim statements. Michael stared at them. This could be anyone." "Call the names on the paper," I said simply. "Ask them yourself." He stood suddenly, pacing the room like the air had gotten too thin. "You're trying to ruin my marriage. Mom's not here anymore. You need to stop trying to control my life." My chest hurt at the way he said it, but I didn't flinch. "I'm trying to save it, Michael, because she's going to take everything and disappear just like she did to the others. Your mother left this for you, not me." His eyes flashed with something between rage and pain. "Why can't you just let me be happy?" "Because I love you." My voice cracked just slightly. "And because your mother spent her last months trying to keep this from happening." He left after that, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The house went quiet again. Hours passed. I sat at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me, untouched. I didn't eat. I didn't turn on the lights. I just waited. The call came after midnight. "Dad!" Michael's voice was hoarse. I called them. I closed my eyes slowly. And they told me everything, word for word, exactly what's in the folder. His breath hitched. "I asked her some questions tonight, just simple ones. Where she grew up, her maiden name, her family. The answers were different, Dad. Completely different from what she told me before." "What happened?" I asked softly. I pushed. I asked about the credit cards in my name. She didn't deny it. She said I wouldn't understand, said I should trust my wife. And then she packed a bag. "She's gone, Dad." "Where?" "I don't know. She won't answer my calls." My heart pounded against my ribs. "I'm calling Peter." Peter answered on the first ring, already awake, like he'd been expecting it. "I'm tracking her. She's at the airport, Marriott. She's making cash withdrawals, about 12,000 so far. She just booked a one-way flight to Mexico City, 6 a.m. "She's running," I whispered. "She's not just running," Peter said. "She's done this before, and if we move fast, we can stop her." "What do you need?" Michael's statement. "We need him to confirm the credit card fraud. Once he does, the police can arrest her at the airport. There are already warrants in Arizona and Florida. It's time to end this." I hung up and called Michael. "Son, I need you to come home now. We have to stop her." 30 minutes later, he pulled into the driveway. His face was pale, his eyes red, shoulders slumped. For the first time in years, he looked like the boy I used to hold after nightmares. "Can we really stop her?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "but you have to be the one to help. This is your life she's tearing apart." He nodded slowly. By 3 a.m., Peter was at the house, spreading files across the kitchen table like a battle plan. The house that once smelled like coffee and Sunday mornings now smelled like paper, ink, and quiet rage. Michael signed his statement with shaking hands. "She's leaving on a 6 a.m. flight," Peter said. "The police will be waiting. If she walks through security, they'll take her down before she even boards." Michael stared at the paper, his jaw clenched. "Then, let's end this." The city was still dark when Peter's car pulled out of my driveway. Streetlights cast long silver lines on the wet pavement, and the world outside felt silent in a way that only happens before dawn. Michael sat in the back seat, his hands clasped tightly together like he was trying to hold himself from falling apart. I sat in the front, staring out the window, every heartbeat louder than the hum of the tires against the road. Peter drove like a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Calm, focused, no wasted movement. "She's booked on a 6 a.m. flight," he said without looking at us. "We'll get there before she goes through security. Detectives are already waiting." Michael didn't say a word. He looked older that night, not in years, but in the way pain etches itself into the face of a man who's just learned the truth about someone he loved. His marriage wasn't a love story. It was a well-rehearsed con. The terminal came into view at 5:15. The airport was already waking up, the smell of burnt coffee from kiosks, the hum of rolling suitcases, the quiet shuffle of early travelers who hadn't yet put on their daytime faces. Peter parked near the security entrance, and we moved inside quickly. 2 plainclothes detectives stood near a column, pretending to read their phones. One of them, a tall woman with sharp eyes, nodded slightly when she saw Peter. "She's on the list," Peter murmured. "Gate B5. She hasn't checked in yet. We wait here." Michael rubbed his palms against his knees. "What if she gets away?" "She won't," Peter said flatly. "Not this time." We didn't have to wait long. At 5:30, Sophie appeared at the far end of the terminal, wheeling 2 large suitcases. She wore a long cream-colored coat and oversized sunglasses, her hair perfectly smooth, as if she'd had all the time in the world. She looked like a woman on vacation, not a woman on the run. Her confidence made my stomach turn. She joined the security line with practiced ease, pulling her luggage forward, her movements graceful, rehearsed. She'd done this before. "Wait for my signal," the detective whispered, moving closer. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to march up to her, to ask her if any of it was real. The smiles, the holidays, the way she called me Dad in that soft voice. But I already knew the answer. It had never been real. The detectives approached her near the checkpoint. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you," the taller detective said. Sophie turned slowly, her sunglasses reflecting the fluorescent lights. She smiled. "Is there a problem, officers?" The badge came out. "We have a warrant for your arrest, Linda Marsh." She froze, just for half a second. Then the smile returned, thinner, sharper. "I don't know who that is. My name is Sophie Walters. You must have the wrong person. Ma'am, please step out of the line." Her eyes flicked around, assessing, calculating. She saw the second detective cutting off her exit, saw Peter behind a column, saw Michael standing 20 feet away. For the first time since I'd met her, I saw something crack in her expression. Then she ran. The sound of her heels against the polished floor echoed through the terminal. She kicked off her shoes mid-stride, her luggage abandoned behind her like a discarded lie. People gasped and stepped back. Someone shouted. She didn't get far. Security officers caught her near the departure board, tackling her to the ground in a tangle of flailing arms. She screamed, not out of fear, but fury. "Get off me, I haven't done anything." The detectives moved fast, handcuffing her, reading her rights as she thrashed against their grip. The contents of her suitcase were spilled open beside us. Clothes, toiletries, bundles of cash tied neatly with rubber bands, a passport with a different name, a hard drive, several IDs. It was like watching someone's entire web of lies laid bare on a cold floor. And then she saw us. Her head snapped toward where Michael and I stood. The fury in her eyes was something I'll never forget. "You," she spat. Her voice echoed across the terminal. "You did this." Michael flinched, but didn't look away. She lunged toward him, the detectives holding her back. "You're pathetic," she hissed. "Weak, just like the others. You really thought someone like me would want you? You're nothing." I stepped between them, just a few inches forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. She turned on me then. "And you," she growled. "You interfering old man, this was mine. 3 years I spent building this. You should have just died quietly and made it easy." People were staring. Phones were recording. But in that moment, all I saw was the woman who'd nearly hollowed out my family. The detectives dragged her back. She kept shouting, spitting, thrashing, but the fight was already over. Michael stood frozen beside me, breathing hard, hands shaking. "It's done," Peter said quietly, stepping up behind us. "She's not getting away this time." The detectives escorted Sophie through a side door, still shouting, still furious, but smaller now, caught. The sound of the security doors slamming shut behind her was like the first real breath I'd taken in months. Michael didn't say anything for a long time. He just stared at the spot where she'd disappeared. I could see everything on his face. The betrayal, the shame, the pieces of his world rearranging themselves in real time. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Son." He shook his head, his voice breaking. "I loved her, Dad. God help me, I loved her. And she was just—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "She fooled a lot of people," I said softly. "She almost fooled your mother, too. But Linda was smarter. She saw the truth coming." Michael's hands came up to his face. I could hear the sound of him trying not to cry, and it ripped something inside me clean open. I didn't try to fix it. I just stood next to him, steady, like a wall he could lean on if he wanted to. The drive home was quiet. Dawn was breaking slowly, the horizon bleeding pale gold and pink through the trees. Michael stared out the window, eyes hollow, but something was different. The lies were gone. The fog she'd wrapped around him was gone, too. All that remained was the pain and the beginning of something that might, one day, become healing. 2 weeks later, Michael and I sat in a police station giving statements. The case stretched far beyond our town. The woman who called herself Sophie had been using stolen identities for years. Her real name was indeed Linda Marsh. 5 confirmed victims, dozens of open investigations, fraud, identity theft, elder exploitation. The list went on. When the prosecutor told us she'd agreed to a plea deal for 12 years in federal prison, Michael didn't celebrate. He just stared at the table, silent. Justice doesn't undo pain. It just closes one door. That night, he came to my house with 2 suitcases. "Can I stay here a while?" he asked quietly. "Of course," I said. "You'll always have a home here." He moved into his old room, the one with football trophies on the shelf and the faded posters of bands he used to love. It was like watching time rewind. Some nights he talked, some nights he didn't. I didn't push. Healing doesn't have a schedule. I paid off what remained of the credit card debt she'd racked up under his name, $5,000. I didn't tell him I didn't need to. He was already carrying enough. And for the first time since Linda died, the house didn't feel entirely hollow anymore. The morning the Shelby came home, the sky was the clearest shade of blue I'd seen in a long time, the kind of blue that only happens after a storm finally gives up. I stood at the edge of the driveway, hands in my jacket pockets, listening to the low, throaty purr of the engine as the tow truck backed in. It wasn't the first time I'd heard that sound, but this time it meant something different. Tommy hopped out of the driver's seat, his grey hair sticking out from under a ball cap, his grin easy and genuine. "She's yours again, Richard," he said, patting the side of the Shelby like an old friend. "No bill, no paperwork, just coming home where she belongs." I stared at the car for a long time before walking closer. The burgundy paint shimmered in the morning light, warm and deep like a glass of red wine. My hand slid over the hood, and for a second, I could almost hear Linda's laugh in the back of my mind, that light, easy sound she made whenever she started the engine on a Sunday drive. "She's beautiful," Michael whispered behind me. I turned to look at him. He'd been standing there quietly the whole time, a mug of coffee warming his hands. His face still carried traces of everything that had happened, the betrayal, the guilt, the wreckage of the life he thought he had. But his shoulders weren't slumped anymore. His eyes, though tired, had light again. Not the same as before, softer, realer. "She always was," I said softly. Tommy handed me the keys with a little nod. Linda told me once that this car isn't just metal and wheels. She said it's a promise. To love, to hold on, to protect what matters. He clapped my shoulder. You kept that promise, Richard. Even when it nearly killed you. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. Michael moved closer, staring at the Shelby with a kind of quiet reverence. I didn't understand, he said finally. When I sold it, I thought it was just a car. I thought she wouldn't care. But it wasn't about the car, was it? No, I said gently. It was never about the car. We stood there for a long moment, father and son, side by side, staring at the thing his mother had built with her own hands. It wasn't just a car. It was love, painted into steel. It was a woman's stubborn hope on four wheels. That afternoon, Michael helped me clear out Linda's old office. For years, I hadn't touched it, couldn't. The bookshelves were still lined with her car magazines, little sticky notes poking out from the pages like whispers. Her handwriting on the calendar was still there, grocery lists, lunch dates, oil change reminders. Every corner of that room was frozen in time, waiting for her to walk back in. Michael picked up a faded photograph from the desk. It was him at 10 years old, sitting in the Shelby with Linda at the wheel, both of them laughing like the world would never break. He traced the edge of the picture with his thumb, his eyes wet. "I've been so blind," he murmured. "You loved someone who lied well," I said. "That doesn't make you weak, son. It makes you human." He set the photo down carefully. "I should have listened to you, to Mom." "No," I said softly. "You should have listened to yourself. But Sophie made sure you couldn't. That's what people like her do. They take away your voice, your vision. And when it's gone, they make you think it was your idea all along." He sank into the chair, his hands covering his face. I walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder, not to fix it, just to be there. "You don't have to forgive yourself all at once," I said. "But don't let her take anything else from you. Not your future, not who you are." Michael nodded slowly, breathing in a shaky breath. The days that followed were quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't hurt anymore, just fills the house softly like sunlight through curtains. We cooked dinners together, sat on the porch with old records playing in the background. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. Healing isn't loud, it's slow, gentle. A week later, Michael came to me holding a folder of his own. "Dad," he said, his voice steady, "I've spoken with a lawyer. I'm filing for an annulment. I want my name back, my life back." I looked at him not as a son broken, but as a man rebuilding. "I'm proud of you." He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "I'm not sure I deserve that, Em." "You do," I said simply. "Because you're still here. You're standing. That's enough." That weekend, we drove the Shelby together for the first time since Linda passed. I slid into the driver's seat, and Michael sat beside me. The engine roared to life, deep and familiar, wrapping around us like an embrace. The road ahead stretched out, golden, under the late afternoon Sunday. Michael leaned back, eyes closed, wind ruffling his hair. For the first time in months, he looked at peace. "You know," he said, his voice almost lost in the sound of the engine, "I used to think Mom loved this car more than anything else in the world, but she didn't. She loved what it meant." "What did it mean to you?" I asked. He thought about it for a long moment. "Freedom. Love. Her." I smiled faintly. Then she got what she wanted. As the Shelby rolled down the road, the weight I'd carried since she passed began to shift. Not gone, but different, lighter. Linda had left me more than just a car and a house. She'd left me a map back to my son. That night, Michael sat on the porch steps while I watered the flowers she'd planted years ago. The air smelled like honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. The sky above was a soft, dark blue with just enough stars to remind me she was still somewhere close. "Dad," Michael said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Yeah? I want to take care of this place. The house, the car, everything. I want to make sure what Mum built doesn't disappear." I turned to him. He wasn't that angry, lost man anymore. He was my boy, older, bruised, but standing taller. "You will," I said. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen since he was little. Not fear, not guilt. Faith. The house creaked softly as the night settled in, like an old friend breathing again. The wind shifted through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed a sound Linda used to love. It felt like home again. It's been 6 months since that night at the airport. The house doesn't echo the way it used to. The walls don't feel cold anymore. Michael lives here with me now, at least for a while, and every morning we share the same quiet rituals: coffee at the kitchen table, the Shelby sitting out front like a living heartbeat, and a silence that doesn't hurt. It just breathes. Grief has a strange way of teaching you how to live again. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not a clean break. It's slow, uneven, like learning how to walk after a bad fall. But every step forward, no matter how small, counts. I've learned something through all of this. Love isn't just the warm parts. It's not just Paris trips and Sunday drives. It's also the parts that demand you stand your ground, that force you to protect what's real, even when it hurts. Linda built a life full of quiet strength. She left behind more than a car, more than money. She left behind a map, a way to remember that family, real family, isn't about perfection. It's about standing together when the world tries to pull you apart. Michael is healing. I am too. And every time I start the Shelby, it feels like Linda is still here riding along with us, humming her favorite song under her breath, reminding me that love doesn't disappear just because someone's gone. It changes shape. It settles into the spaces between your heartbeats. So if you're sitting somewhere right now, staring at the pieces of a broken story, don't give up on it. Broken things can be rebuilt. Lost things can find their way home. And love, the real kind, has a way of leaving a light on for you, even in the darkest hours. This was my story, a story about a father, a son, and a woman who loved us enough to protect us even after she was gone. If it reached you, if it reminded you of something in your own life, stay with us for more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and support this channel, because every story has a heartbeat, and sometimes hearing one can remind you of your own.